everyone and welcome back to Elle the Law Student. I'm really excited to film today's video because it's one that you suggested. So a couple of weeks ago, or maybe even a week ago, I'm not sure, but I asked for any sort of video requests and a lot of them were about A-levels, but about different aspects of A-levels, and so I thought rather than make a video about each individual subject, I would just do an A-level Q&A. I had lots of questions, so thank you very much. Some of them were kind of similar, so I'm going to try and if I'm answering a question and it seems like I'm not focusing on the question so much, it's because I've had another similar question that I'm also trying to answer within that answer, if that makes sense. Okay, so I'll start with probably the most common one, and that was which A-levels did you study? So I started my A-levels with English language, English literature, history and biology and an EPQ. So I was doing my EPQ in law, and obviously because I wanted to study law at university, I really wanted to do a good job of that. I ultimately found that I was just struggling to get everything done. Like, I had lots of essays obviously for my 3 essay based subjects, and then biology is both very content heavy and very time consuming in terms of like your homework and that sort of thing. So I did that for a few months and ultimately I decided to drop it. The biggest thing was probably the fact that I wasn't having time to do like any extra reading. So I was comfortably getting all of my homework done, I was comfortably like getting good grades in all of my subjects, but I wanted to engage a little bit more with those subjects. Like, I wanted to do extra reading, I wanted to find out more, and I was finding them super interesting. And I also wanted to do a really good job of my EPQ because it was the only kind of academic work that I would be doing related to my degrees choice. And so ultimately I decided to drop biology. However, I'm still very much interested in biology. So the next question is, should I mention my A-levels in a personal statement for an Oxford law course? You might have watched my personal statement videos, you might have not, and I can't remember if I mentioned this in there. So it kind of depends what you mean by mention them. At the end of the day, I think it's important to just focus on the stuff that you've not been forced to do, if that makes sense. So although it's perfectly fine to put your A-levels in there and maybe you speak about what you've learned from them, especially if it is a subject that you're continuing at university, I think that it's super important to show that you've also done further research and just like further reading around that subject. The other thing is, it's not like the university doesn't know which A-levels you're studying, so you don't necessarily need to write I'm currently studying this and this, because that's already on your UCAS application, and so it's not a big deal. Okay, so the next one is, how many hours a week should I be doing work-wise for each subject? This is something that I definitely struggled with. The way that it was explained to us is to do like 1 hour of independent study for each hour that you spent in the classroom. That varies according to the week though, obviously, because if, for example, you've got a mock exam coming up, you're going to want to spend more than 5 hours studying. If you've got no homework and you feel confident with all of the content, then you're probably not going to spend 5 hours studying. I aim to do 20 hours of independent study a week, and so I would roughly try and divide that time up according to my subject, but it wouldn't necessarily be proportionate, so I wouldn't always spend 5 hours on one subject and so on and so forth. A lot of the time, especially in my second year of A-levels, that was bumping up to like 30, 35, and then by the time I was on like study leave, that was obviously getting to like full-time work kind of level. However, I do think that there isn't one set way for everybody, that's just what worked for me, and I did overwork at A-level, and so sometimes counting how many hours of work a week that you're doing can be quite reassuring. Sometimes I found it quite reassuring because at the end of the week I could look at what I'd achieved and say, okay, that's fine, I've done 30 hours this week. But in other ways you can also feel quite guilty even if you don't actually need to be doing more work. I had a sixth form told me that I should have a jar, and each time I'd done an hour of work put in a piece of pasta, and it should be a different colour of pasta for each subject. Now I didn't have that much pasta, so instead what I did was I just printed out a sheet that had got a jar on it, and each time I put sort of a highlighted line on it. The next one is, how long did you spend revising a day from September until the end of exams? Quite honestly, I didn't properly start revising until maybe like Easter. I had mock exams in January, so I spent Christmas revising for my subjects then. And then I would say Easter, which was in March I think when I did my exams, was when I started actually revising. I think a lot of the time like my revision would just be making sure that I understood what I'd done in the lesson that day, trying to do a bit of extra reading, especially for things like English language, because I feel like there's always more theories that you can learn for that. And so that would kind of be my revision, but I personally don't find it beneficial to like revise absolutely everything all the time, because I have quite a short-term memory, so I'm not going to remember something for that long. However, by the time it got to like March, I would say I was probably keeping up my like 30-hour a week, and then by the time I got to study leave I was doing too much work. Basically I was doing too much work. I would personally say that if you're doing your study leave, and this is like study leave, this isn't what I do in school, treat it like a working week, like I've said in other videos, because I didn't do that, and it just led to a really awful exam period. My SD card just ran out of space, so I'm hoping that I've managed to get like the shot the same, but if not, that's why. So the next question is, what's the best way to manage my time? I've just started year 12 and I'm doing 4 A-levels. So first of all, congratulations on starting year 12, that's really exciting, and actually I think that A-levels are such a cool opportunity to study the subjects that you love. Making sure that you plan ahead. So I still do this now, and I've probably mentioned it before, but each week I plan out my week according to where I'm going to be doing different work. So as soon as I would get an essay when I was at school, I would figure out when I was going to write that essay, and that works out really well, because rather than having this mountain of work, you've just got little bits and pieces that you're going to do and chip away at it. Okay, so the next one is, how did you manage stress at A-level? Are they more stressful than GCSEs? I honestly think it depends on the person, because I did find A-levels more stressful than GCSE, but I found them more enjoyable than GCSEs by a long way, because I really enjoyed my subjects that I was studying. I found them really engaging. There's more work, but I personally enjoyed it a lot more. However, I didn't do the GCSEs that a lot of you are doing or have done, because I was still doing the like A star to C GCSEs rather than the 9 to 1s. Like none of my GCSEs had the numbering grading system. So I can't compare that to your experience, because I know that the new GCSEs are really rather tricky. Next one, kind of similar, are A-levels harder than a degree? I again would say it depends on the person, because I know some people who find A-levels a lot harder than their degree, because they go to degree level and they find everything super interesting, they just get it immediately. I personally find my degree harder than my A-levels, but that could also be because I've never studied law before, and so it's a completely new subject, and it's quite challenging, and at Oxford the workload is higher than at other universities, so depends on the person, the university and the course, I think. How did you revise for English literature? Help. I'm trying to think. So I made some flashcards with like key terms on them, especially for when I was doing my unseen poetry analysis and that sort of thing, because it really helped me to pick out different bits of the poem and analyse it. What else did I do? Oh, actually it's super helpful to kind of watch, especially if you're doing plays, to watch the films of them and that sort of thing, because I found that you can really understand them better when somebody speaks them out loud, especially Shakespeare. And really just doing as many practice essays as you can. That might sound a bit time consuming, but make sure you are doing them in timed conditions, and if you do that, then you can get like an essay done per study period, and that makes it a lot easier. Did you do anything other than study? I'm assuming this means like, did I have a job or anything? Yes, I did. I worked as a waitress, I still do work as a waitress, and I also taught musical theatre. And I wrote for my local magazine. On a related note, did you do student council? I did actually. I did student council all the way from like being about 7 years old to being 18. And then when I was in my final year, so year 13, I was head girl at my school, because I have always been like super into making sure that people's voices are heard. And I just found it really interesting speaking to everybody and actually trying to make a difference. Any advice on having a bad teacher? I think it kind of depends on what a bad teacher is. Whether it's they don't know the content very well, they aren't marking your work. I think everything can vary. First things first, often you need to show that you actually are interested in your subject. Sometimes I found that teachers would kind of assume no one was bothered almost, and so they wouldn't assume that you wanted to get loads of feedback and stuff. Being really polite and asking, but also you do have to appreciate that teachers are super overworked, and so you know, there's kind of a balance. And in terms of if they don't know the course very well, this happens, it's happened to me before. Sometimes you've just got to take initiative and go out there and learn it yourself. At the end of the day, especially when you get to A-level, the main thing is your independent study. So if you've not got a brilliant teacher, then yes, it's super annoying, but you can still do it, and I know from experience you can still learn all of that content. Buy yourself a textbook, get to work on making some revision cards, really get to know the syllabus really well. If your teacher will mark it, then hand in a bit of extra work if you're able to. Yeah, and good luck. Also, if it is a genuine problem, like, it's absolutely fine to go to somebody higher up, speak to your head of sixth form, your head teacher, anyone like that. But I think the worst thing you can do is just sit there moaning about it, because at the end of the day that has no impact on them, it just impacts you. And I'll finish on this one because I feel like it's a good one to finish on. So any advice for new A-level students? I think be nice and friendly with your teachers. You need to build a good relationship with them. Because sometimes as well you might need some essay extensions and that sort of thing, and if you don't have a good relationship with your teachers, you're not necessarily going to get that. Just kind of work hard but not too hard, which is obviously quite difficult to find a balance. Potentially take on some extracurricular activities, because that will really help you to figure out that balance. Most of all, have fun. Remember why you chose those A-level subjects, because at the end of the day that's what motivated you to come back to school. You didn't have to do those subjects, you didn't have to do A-levels. So why did you pick those subjects? And just keep reminding yourself of them, and also sometimes kind of focusing and getting excited for the next step. So whether that's an apprenticeship or a degree or a full-time job or anything, it's really exciting to kind of move on to that next stage in your life. So I think kind of viewing your A-levels as a stepping stone to that place can be like really motivating. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this is helpful. If you do have any video suggestions, then please let me know, because I really like filming videos that you have suggested, because then I feel like they might actually be useful. I hope you have a lovely week, and bye.